So now we're going to go ahead and start off with a question. And this is a big picture question, okay? So if you're keeping track of AP World themes like Spice Tea or Inspect, I'm sure you'll nail this question, no problem. So we're going to be putting the letter to the answer in the text box. So take a look at the two pictures that you see up here. The first one is Hans Weigel. It's a woodcut of an Ottoman janissary in 1577 of the Ottoman Empire. Second one is Japanese arquebusiers in the late 1500s. Which of the following broad trends is alluded to in these images? Is it A, religious warfare? Is it B, mistreatment of ethnic minorities? Is it C, technology transfer? Or is it D, growing prevalence of coerced labor? So again, go ahead and put your name in the chat button, and we're starting to get some feedback already. Let's give everybody a minute to go ahead and feed into this. Okay. Interesting. We're getting some good feedback this evening. Wow, talk about participation. My screen is just blowing up here. I love it. Thank you for jumping in. Let's give about another 10 seconds for people to jump in, and then we're going to go and reveal the answer. Well, I'm seeing a lot of C's with a few D's and an A. Let's see what the answer is. So the magic answer is, drum roll, da 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 da. It's C, technology transfer. Now, why is it this way? First, it's not A. While the prevalence of weapons does suggest there's warfare, it's not enough evidence. Keyword, look for the evidence anytime you see a question. So we eliminate A because we don't see that evidence. Yeah, great job. Also, I was referring to it to a certain teacher's students on here. They're doing a fantastic job. By the way, it's not B. There's no evidence of other ethnic groups being present either. So, and it's not D, because think of slavery. Is there any evidence of slavery in the picture? There isn't. Let's go to C. Why is it C? Because it's technology, it's guns transferring, cannons, artillery. That's the ball game. The Ottomans were in the Middle East area. The Japanese were in East Asia. It jumped from one continent to the other. So it's literally trade facilitates people getting a hold of gunpowder weaponry, which facilitates conquest. So great job to a lot of people. I saw a lot of C's just running up and down there. So great job. Let's move on to the next slide and jump in to this stream and some of our common characteristics. So those common characteristics we're looking for of expanding empires, 1450 to 1750 CE, is the three gunpowder empires. We're talking the Ottoman Empire, the Mughal Empire, and the Safavid Empire. And welcome, I'm so glad you could join too. The other empires we're going to touch on as well that are occurring at the same time and are also building into expanding empires is the Qing Empire or Qing Dynasty in China and the Russian Empire. So for today, we're going to set up the gunpowder empires, but we're also going to give you some bonus material, take you into the Russians and the Chinese Qing empires. So let's wait no further. Let's get going. Now, the common characteristics, this is a broad overview of all these empires, is the rise of gunpowder, cannon as expansion weapons. Yes, there was a question on a screen several back. When we go ahead and put in, the Google Slides for this presentation, go to the beginning and you'll see it. But don't worry, there are other great questions coming. So back to the common characteristics, rise of gunpowder and cannon as expansion weapons. And yes, there will be a Google link for this slide. We see the fall of the Mongols and the Byzantine Empire opening doors for new gunpowder empires. We're going to see a shift away from inner Asian pastoral warrior kingdoms, aka the Mongols, but also others, and we're going to show one of those, to outer Asia European people. So we're moving to the outer edges of Asia and also to prominent areas in Europe. This is expansion. It's funded by taxes, trade, and conquered people. Also, these empires are going to promote foreign trade, architecture, and the arts while they're expanding and conquering. So let's take a look at a prelude to the gunpowder empires. It's Tamerlane's empire. Tamerlane's, or Timur, in Central Asia during the 15th century got a hold of gunpowder weaponry and showed its awesome power in battle. Timur, or Tamerlane, arose from Samarkand, which this is one of the chief stops in the Silk Road. This is today's Uzbekistan in Central Asia. He ends up conquering much of Central Asia. He pushes in the conquered areas in Persia, all the way to Afghanistan, and even Western India before he finally dies. And the Tamerlane Empire became the last inner Asian pastoral warrior kingdom, just like the Mongols. The Mongols would fade out and Tamerlane's empire would come in, but it would not last long after he died. And because of that, this is where we enter what this is truly about, our prelude. Now we get to the main course. Welcome to the Gunpowder Era. You can see here a full-size cannon, and I will tell you in a moment where we find this cannon from, but this is classic Gunpowder Empire era. The use of technology is shifting the ability of peoples to take over and conquer areas. Those who have them are empowered. Those who do not have gunpowder empire weaponry or are not employing them, sadly, are coming out on the short side of history. So gunpowder empires, they are large multi-ethnic states in Southwest, Central, and Southeast Asia. They rely on cannons and artillery to conquer and control lands. Now, there are three key Muslim gunpowder empires. They're the Ottoman Empire, the Safavid Empire, and the Mughal Empire. And note, these are Muslim warriors leading these empires, and they were of Turkic descent. So they're coming in from Central Asia, from what I call the stands: Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, the stands. Now, each of these empires is going to take advantage of power vacuums. We're going to see the Mongol Empire break up, and that's going to open the door for gunpowder empires, the Ottoman, Safavid, and Mughal, to step in and take over with new gunpowder weaponry. And each empire replaced another weakened and corrupt state or empire. Also, another empire that you're seeing in the breakup here is the weakening of the Byzantine or the Byzantine Empire. That is going to cause some major difficulties for the Byzantines, but it's going to open doors for the gunpowder empires, for the Ottomans especially. So let's keep going. So here is our main slide here. Our three gunpowder empires: the Ottoman Empire, Mughal Empire, and the Safavid Empire. Let's start with the Ottoman Empire. This is the largest and longest lasting gunpowder empire by far. So by 1300 CE, we're seeing numerous Turkic warrior groups. They're moving in Anatolia. Anatolia is modern day Turkey. So you can see cities in Turkey such as Istanbul, which was Constantinople, today's capital, Ankara. If you're watching the news, you're watching how Turkey is actually invading into Syrian areas as we speak. But we'll keep going. The reason why these Turkic warrior groups fled in Anatolia is because they were fleeing the Mongols, who were hot on their tail. The Ottoman Turks, once the Mongols come apart and start to break up, then the Ottoman Turks, by the time we get into the 1400s, they're going to be controlling much of Anatolia, modern-day Turkey, parts of Eastern Europe, and they're going to bypass Constantinople. But this is not going to last forever. They're really encircling Constantinople to ensure its fall. So, and this is where the great Ottoman Empire leader Mehmed II, he besieges and conquers Constantinople in 1453. This is the death knell of the Byzantine Empire. This is where it ends for the Byzantines. And this is where the Ottoman Empire achieves its capital. By the way, Mehmed II, this was a dream of his since he was 13. And he had to go through a lot of travails in order to do this. And a pivotal part that's going to play in here is a big change in warfare. So guess what? It is time for participation by our viewers. So let's jump on in. The fall of Constantinople in 1453, the death of not the Ottoman Empire, excuse me, I'm going to have to fix that. That is the Byzantine. My mistake there. So let me go ahead and fix that, and I'll put that on the excuse me, and I'll go ahead and put that in the slide at the end. So why was Constantinople's fall in 1453? So we're talking about the Byzantine Empire. Please pardon my mistake with the Ottoman Empire. Why is Constantinople's fall in 1453 an epic turning event in warfare? So let's answer in the chat box. Is it A? Is it number 1, chain across the Strait of Marmara, stopping all ships? 2, the blockade of Constantinople by the Ottomans? 3, the poor condition of Constantinople's wall? Or is it 4, the use of cannon to destroy Constantinople's walls? Oh my goodness, we are getting all kinds of great feedback here. Oh my goodness, this is almost unanimous. Oh my goodness, this is amazing. I'm going to have to put my compliments not only to these students, but to their teachers, because they know their stuff. Let's go to the answer, and guess what? It was the cannon. It was number 4, so congratulations. You all are right on point. So the cannon led to Constantinople's fall, and this is where the Ottoman Empire takes over Constantinople and will change it to Istanbul. So Mehmed II of the Ottoman Empire employed a cannon builder named Orban. Now, a little story behind this. Orban is this Hungarian. He's very ambitious. He always wants to build the next biggest cannon. So he's looking around. He wants to keep building enormous guns, bigger and bigger. So this one was actually employed in the siege of Constantinople by Mehmed II, leading the Ottomans. This is 27 feet long. So imagine you got a cannonball in there. You got a 30-inch diameter tube in there. So you're launching a cannonball 27 feet long. Talk about accurate and highly powerful. By the way, this Hungarian, the great cannon maker Orban, he actually offered his services to the Byzantine Empire, but they didn't have enough money, so they had to turn him down. He, not being an entrepreneurial individual, went to the Ottomans and said, hey, you want to hire me? Mehmed II said, perfect, that's exactly what I need. So history goes to the Ottomans and the Mehmed. By the way, you can, if you have any questions as you're moving along the way, there is an ask a question section, and you can drop a question in there anytime, and we'll go ahead and get back to that. So let's keep going with the Ottoman Empire continued. Constantinople's fall ends the Byzantine Empire. That is it. 1453, it is done. Mehmed II renames the city Istanbul, and the Ottomans are going to rebuild the city. By the way, if I should have put it in here, a picture of the Hagia Sophia. This is where a Christian Eastern Orthodox cathedral becomes a mosque, and today is an amazing museum. So if you haven't seen that, take a look at it. It is just amazing. There's a fantastic high definition view where you can move through up and down. It is truly amazing. Or if you get a chance to visit, put it on your list when you go to Istanbul. Back to our regularly scheduled content. The Ottomans rebuilt the city, continued conquering Eastern Europe, Africa, and Southwest Asia until Christian forces at Vienna are going to stop the Ottoman attacks twice. Once this happens, that's as far into Eastern Europe as they go. Now, the Ottoman Empire is going to reach its greatest height under Suleiman I. And Suleiman I is going to bring architecture, great arts, public works projects all through the Ottoman Empire. Now, after Suleiman's rule, the Ottoman Empire is going to slowly decline. Now, this is a long period of time. Understand, we're talking the 1400s all the way to 1918, the end of World War I. This is by far the longest of the gunpowder empires, by far. So this is a pretty amazing accomplishment. Understand, though, the Ottoman Empire is just going to keep contracting after Suleiman's the first rule. Now let's move on to our next gunpowder empire, the Safavid Empire. This was founded by Salah al-Din in the 14th century. Now note, he's Muslim of Turkic descent. He focused on a militant campaign in Persia, which is present-day Iran, parts of Iraq, into Pakistan and Afghanistan, to purify and reform Shia Islam. Now let's just do a quick review of this real quick. Shia or Shiite Islam believes that that in order for a religious leader in Islam to be, they have to be a direct descendant of the daughter of Muhammad, Fatima, and the son-in-law, Ali. So they have to trace their lineage directly. As opposed to this, Sunni Muslims believe that any good leader who has proper background, that has religious training, that is living a holy life and seeks that wisdom, can become a successful caliph. So note this tension. We're going to see it coming up and in the future between Sunni and Shiite or Shia Islam. Now, the Safavid Empire is Shia Islam. So after that militant campaign in Persia to purify and reform Shia Islam, Shah Ismail becomes the leader. And the Safavid Empire is often going to find itself fighting with the Sunni Islam Ottoman Empire. Now, the Safavid Empire's height was under Shah Abbas the Great. Artillery defines this empire's expansion. So at its height, it's going to move from Kurdistan in what's today Iraq all the way to Afghanistan into the Mughal border itself. Now, Shah Abbas beautified the capital that they created in Isfahan with amazing, beautiful mosques and numerous streets, public works. However, the Safavid Empire is not going to last as long as one might think because it has weaknesses. There's a lack of navy, and no, the Persian Empire is right on the Arabian Sea and the Persian Gulf, and internal rebellions and corruption are going to weaken it. So in 1722, Afghan Pashtuns are going to rebel within the Safavid Empire, and they're going to sack Isfahan. And they're going to replace the firm Safavid control with chaos. By 1760, the Safavid Empire is going to be replaced by the Zand dynasty, or Zand Empire. And this empire would carry all the way to 1912 with the foundation of modern Iran. So let's take a look at the Safavid. You can see the Ottoman and Safavid empires circa about 1600 put side by side. The Safavid empire being in green. You can see Isfahan and modern day capital Tehran above it. You can see in Saudi Arabia. And you can see the Ottoman Empire, which reaches down into Mecca, Medina, crosses over into Cairo, Egypt, what's modern day Libya, through the Middle East, down the other side of Arabia, opposite, and into Anatolia and Eastern Europe around the Black Sea. Now, let's go to the third gunpowder empire, the Mughal Empire in India. Let's start with Babur, a Mongol descendant of Tamerlane. Remember Tamerlane, first one to really start employing in Persia and Central Asia gunpowder warfare. Babur founds the Mughal Empire by conquering northern India. Babur's successor, Akbar, becomes Mughal India's most capable and efficient leader. Akbar expands the Mughal Empire into modern-day India, Pakistan, Afghanistan. He promoted tolerance of all religions, including Hinduism. In fact, we're going to see under the Mughal Empire the Sikh faith arise. We're also going to see an incredibly efficient government in that area. And Akbar was very good at balancing Hindu and Muslim and other religious groups within the Mughal Empire. Now note, most of this area is in the Sindh region, which is the Ganges River, pushing over to the outlet where the Ganges and the Brahmaputra come together. Also the Harappan River. Now, Shah Jahan, this is probably one of the West's most well-known Mughal emperors. He lived from 1627 to 1658. So he built the Taj Mahal as a mausoleum after his deceased wife. And this is one of the great buildings of the world. If you visit India, this is on the must-do list. Here's a map of the Mughal Empire. You can see areas that extend the Mughal Empire in orangish by 1530. By 1605, it expands into the green areas. Mughal Empire by 1707 is pushing into reddish areas. It's pushing south into southern India and the Deccan areas. And then Mughal expansion would even push into the Afghan kingdom. And you'll see that on the upper left-hand side of the map. Now, what's causing the decline of the gunpowder empires ultimately? And first, it's the expensive military armies are draining the treasuries. There are deep religious divisions in Mughal India that finally come to surface, especially between Hindus and Muslims. Remember, the Hindus and the Muslims have two very different approaches to their faith. And because of this, and because of Mughal rule, there's going to be resentment between the Muslims who rule and the majority Hindus who resent that rule. Not to say the differences between their religions, which that's a whole different presentation. You're going to see Sunni and Shia Islam divisions between Shia Safavid Empire and the predominant Sunni Ottoman Empire. They're going to fight quite a bit. And then European trading companies are going to seek control of trade routes and trade cities. They're going to move into India and they're going to take advantage of weaknesses wherever they can find them to promote footholds and expand trade. Now, guess what? Viewers, it's time for question and answer. So get ready to fire those great questions in the box, just like you've done before. what were the common traits of the gunpowder empires? So we're talking about the Ottoman Empire, the Safavid Empire, and the Mughal Empire. So tell me in the chat box, you can just put down Ottoman or Safavid or Mughal, or you can put all three and then list a common trait. So let's give you a minute to go ahead and fire in some common traits that we've learned from the gunpowder empires. Yes, the rulers of all three were Muslim. Absolutely. Let's go ahead and get some other. What were some common traits of the gunpowder empires? Okay, absolutely. Ottoman was the lastest longing. Yes, they used artillery and cannons to conquer. You got it. They're all military based. Absolutely. Gunpowder, artillery, cannons. They took advantage of power vacuums. Absolutely. They had expensive military forces or militia. So I'll go ahead and give it about another 20 seconds. So the Safavid Empire, yes, it is Shia or Shiite. So let me go ahead and take a look. And yes, the Mughals did promote religious tolerance. So remember that the Ottomans are Sunni and the Safavid are Shia or Shiite. So I might have made a little mistake there. Yes, and Safavid Empire, its greatest height comes under Shah Abbas the Great with Isfahan and its beautification. So great job, everybody. Wow, this is amazing participation. This makes it so much fun. Thank you so much. Let's keep going. Now, we're going to be going into two additional empires that are part of expanding empires. And we're going to step away from the gunpowder empires, but these are important for many of the same similar reasons. We're going to look at the Qing dynasty in China and the Russian Empire and its expansion. So let's begin. Now we've got to lay a little bit of groundwork before we get going. And by the way, if you have any questions as we're moving through, be sure to go ahead and just click the ask a question and we'll circle back to all these at the end. So before the Qing dynasty, we need to know about the Ming dynasty. Now, China's Mongol-ruled Yuan dynasty lasted from 1271 to 1368 CE. This is established by Kublai Khan. Now, Zhu Yuanzhang, a military commander in China, he's going to seize upon the weakness of the Mongol Empire as we push towards 1368 and the Yuan dynasty, and he's going to overthrow the Mongol-founded Yuan dynasty and establish the Ming dynasty. Now note, Ming dynasty China is a return to Han China values and principles. So you're going to see reintroduction of civil service exams, public works projects like you saw in previous Han-dominated China areas, and traditional Han China values and beliefs. And the Ming dynasty begins with several decades of massive agricultural expansion. We're going to see when people have plenty of food, population grows. Also, commerce included with the Spanish and the Portuguese. You're going to see the Spanish in Canton, or what is Guangzhou today, and also the Portuguese in Macau. And in the fine arts, for instance, you'll see great things like ink brush paintings. Now, before we go any further, I think the Ming dynasty at its height, you gotta note the epic naval voyages of Zheng. Oh my goodness, he could have radically reshaped the world as we know it if his voyages had continued past Asia and Eastern Africa. So these voyages are going to be a series of voyages from 1405 to 1433. Let me put a map up and let you take a look at the voyages of Zheng in the early Ming dynasty. you can see he moved from Nanking all the way through southern China into areas like Quinlan and what is today Vietnam. He goes down into Indonesia, Surabaya. He's going to go in Palembang into the Malacca Strait. Note a lot of traffic and a lot of piracy occurred and still occurs in that area. And you'll see him move into ports in China, into ports Hormuz in Persia. He'll go to Arabia. He'll even go over to Eastern African Mogadishu, Malindi. I mean, this is amazing. The thing that made it even more impressive is that some of the ships that he piloted, junks, were the size of World War II aircraft carriers. Imagine 100 of these at one time with 28,000 men aboard. And with Zheng having total power over this. This must have been some site when they pulled into a port. I mean, aircraft carrier size. This was amazing. Well, sadly though, we're going to just a little note on the side because this is just fun. And I just spent time reviewing this. I thought you'd enjoy it too, is that once the emperor backing him dies, the next emperor of the Ming Dynasty steps in and says, hey, we have the Silk Road. We don't need this naval expedition power anymore. And this fleet was mothballed and scrapped. Could you imagine if they had continued this for another 40 or 50 years and moved around the Horn of Africa, maybe even moved towards Europe or continued west? There might have been a possibility of South America, North America, maybe even Australia being rediscovered by the Ming Dynasty Chinese. Could you imagine that? We might be speaking Mandarin Chinese right now. But history took a change, as we know, as it's often sometimes does. So let's keep moving on. We got to get to our expansionistic empires. Now, we had a fun diversion back to the Qing Dynasty. This is a Manchu dynasty from Manchuria. This is northeast China. It's a strong industrial area, and it takes advantage of a Chinese famine in 1644. A minor court official, Li Zicheng, leads a peasant revolt. And the Manchus go, oh, great, you took Beijing, fantastic. We'll invade and pretend to back you up. This invasion forms the Qing Dynasty. Now, it's going to take 40 years to conquer all of China. So understand, just like the Mongols under Kublai Khan, the Qing Dynasty under the Manchus is not going to occur all at once. It's going to be a successive series of battles pushing south and to the west. Now, two top emperors were Emperor Kangxi and Emperor Qianlong. They both promoted foreign commerce. They both opened ports and promoted them, like Macau and Guangzhou, which is also known as Canton, the limited foreign trade. They're going to extend control, especially to new areas. Kangxi is going to annex Tibet, Taiwan, and Mongolian areas into China. Emperor Qianlong is going to conquer Xinjiang, and this is the home of the Uyghur people, who are predominantly Muslim. Modern China resembles the Qing Dynasty very strongly. So this is a classic expansionistic empire. Now we're going to slide over to the Russian Empire, 1450 to 1700. As you may have remembered from prior streams, the Mongols had the Khanate of the Golden Horde. There's a name for you. Wow. It makes you think twice before you mess with them. So the Mongol control over Russia, though, they got there and they went, well, what do you have? They didn't have silk. They didn't have gold. They didn't have all kinds of valuable things. And it wasn't along the Silk Road. So the Mongols set up the Russian princes to keep tribute coming to the Mongol Empire. and they pretty much left, except for raids and times when people decided not to pay their tribute like they should have. Now, as Mongol control dissolves and falls out, Russian princes start gaining power. Remember, these Russian princes, they were the ones gathering the taxes. So they had already built wealth and they had already built power by part of their position before. So we start seeing Russia's fur trade starts opening up. It becomes very popular in Europe and other areas, especially as we go into a cold age, an actual cooling of the earth. Fur becomes very high in demand. This is a new lucrative trade opportunity among many others. Trade agreements with European powers create new markets. They fuel Russian expansion into what was previous Mongol Khanates as they continue east and into Siberia. Now, let's talk about these pivotal princes in Russia. Pivotal princes from Muscovy, Novgorod, and other areas are going to fight for control in Western Russia. Eventually, the Moscow princes, or the Muscovy princes, will take over and assert and come out on top of these battles. So, of the Muscovy or Moscow princes that take over, pivotal leaders coming from the Moscow area. Ivan III, 1462 to 1505, he unites Russian city-states, including Novgorod. He's going to bring them in and bring them into the Russian fold. Then Ivan IV, 1547 to 1584, he expands Russia by taking control of Mongol Khanates to the east and Siberia. So where is Novgorod? If you go to Moscow, where it is today, and you go a little to the north, Novgorod is not that far away. So these city-states were within close range of each other. And Ivan III, when he solidifies taking over Novgorod, that solidifies the Muscovy princes and Ivan III as the leader of Russia. And then Ivan IV builds on that. So great question. Now, pivotal readers in Russia, it continues. Now we enter the Romanovs. Remember, the Romanovs, we're going to take this all the way to the Russian Revolution in 1917, but that's a whole different presentation, so we'll get that later. Enter the Romanovs in Russia. So these are Moscow-based. Peter the Great, 1682 to 1725. So they're going to push the Russian border to Mongolia. But more than that, Peter the Great was a great admirer of Western European empires and countries. He would travel to major capitals like London, Paris, Vienna, and he would see Western Europe with grand palaces and he said, I want this. He also saw the technology that was starting to build in that area, and he wanted it too. So Peter the Great imports that technology into Russia. He starts building factories in the Ural Mountains to the east of Moscow, and he does something daring. He shifts the capital of Russia from Moscow by building St. Petersburg. It is a European designed city. So this becomes Russia's new European styled capital. And okay, if there are any Russians in the background, prepare, your jaw's going to drop. They forced men to shave their beards. This was unheard of. So in Russia, big gasp there. And the peasant taxes, they shifted taxes from land to per person peasant taxes. And because of this, these peasant taxes are going to be rather oppressive, but they're going to fund ambitious military campaigns to expand Russia. Now, let's take a look. Here's a picture of the Winter Palace in St. Petersburg, Russia, built under Peter the Great. You can see that even though it's flying, as you can see up top, a Russian flag, a modern day Russian flag, this is a very Western European background It looks like this could be out of Vienna, Paris, any one of these major cities. It's an enormous palace. He actually modeled it greatly after Paris's Versailles Palace. So this was an equal, and this shows Peter the Great's expansionistic abilities, but also his admiration of Western Europe and wanting to bring Russia into place as a powerful European power. All right, guess what? It is time for viewer input. I didn't forget about you. So now we're going to look for common traits of the Russian and Qing empires. So it's time for viewer input in the chat box. So what are some common factors that led to the rise of the Russian and the Qing, or known as Manchu empires? So what are those common factors of the Russian and the Qing empires? Go ahead and fill those in that box. I can't wait for your replies. So let's give everybody a little bit of time to put that together before I bring up. Yes, both developed from corrupted Mongol Khanates. Absolutely. They both built on that. Both took advantage of weakened states that gained power. Absolutely. The Russians preyed on the Mongols. The Qing dynasty preyed on the Mongols. Princess Anastasia, that'll come later on. So not quite, but I'm glad you brought it up. Yes, they both were ruled with absolute power. These were not democratic republics. They had emperors or czars ruling them. So let's give about another 20 seconds because we definitely want to finish up on time so you can hop over to another live stream if need be. Yes, they both increased trade and they were both heavily expansionistic, just like the Gunpowder empires. So let's move over. Great participation. Let's sum it all up. Expanding empires. So we're going to see the Ottoman, Safavid, and Mughal empires, the Gunpowder empires. The three gunpowder ones. For Ottoman, key city, Istanbul or Constantinople. Key leaders, Mehmed II, Suleiman I. Regions, Southwest Asia, North Africa, Eastern Europe. Safavid and Isfahan. You're going to see key leaders like Salah al-Din and Shah Abbas the Great, and this is Persia. The Mughal Empire, key cities like Delhi, Agra, and Lahore. You see key leaders like Babar, Akbar, and Shah Jahan, and this is India. Now, expanding empires, we're leaving the three classic gunpowder empires, but these are expanding empires, and don't think they're not noticing the power of gunpowder and cannons and artillery and warfare. So the Russians, you're going to see key cities in St. Petersburg, Kiev, and Moscow. Key leaders, Ivan III, Ivan IV, and Peter the Great. You'll see regions North Europe and Asia. So Russia is a Eurasian empire. And then the Qing, or also the Manchu dynasty, you'll see key cities like Beijing and Guangzhou, key leaders like Kanji and Qianlong. And these are East Asia regions, even though they're going to push the Chinese empire into areas like Tibet, into Xinjiang, which is the Uyghur regions. So with that said, before we continue on, let's look at some of the questions that we have. Here we go. Is a militant campaign a war? That's a great question. And yes, campaigns meaning organized operation. In other words, you have organized weaponry. You have organized armies. These aren't just kind of hit and run or ragtag put together. Also, were the Mughal Sunni? The majority of them, yes, absolutely. Um, they also took interest in the Sufi version of Sunniism. Sufis focused on spirituality and expression. You would have to go to Persia under the Safavid Empire to see larger Shia or Shiite Islam. And Ottomans, of course, were predominant Sunni Islam, just like the Mughals. So thank you. Thank you to Mr. Beckman and Mr. Williams for giving some great background on that. Let's make sure we took care of all the questions. Yep, we're looking good. So let's move on to the last part. And just remember the Think Five, you can always find us at Think Fiveable on YouTube, Instagram, or Twitter, just at Think Fiveable. We also have other streams and other subjects and in our own that are coming up soon. So I really urge you to take advantage of those and save your spot for tomorrow night's great stream. There's a live stream clickable right there. You can click it and book your spot now on there. So I encourage you as we finish up to do this. But I want to thank you for just some great participation, some fantastic feedback from people. I want to thank two teachers on there, Mr. Williams and Mr. Beckman, for joining me and making this all the more rich and that. And with that said, we've got time for you if you need to go ahead and jump on another stream. So tonight, thank you for joining Empires Expand. I wish you a great evening. Thank you for great participation. Have a great evening, everybody. You're very welcome. I'm glad you found it helpful. You're most welcome. Have a great evening. Be sure to check up on our stuff and all the different streams that are coming up. Book that one, and I'll be putting in the Google slide as soon as I tweak that one slide just a little bit for you. You're very welcome. Thank you so much. Have a great evening, everybody. Good night, everybody.